Hello and welcome to another episode of Who Knew in the Moment, the podcast. I'm your host, Phil Friedrich, and today I am honored to have Keegan Hall with me. Keegan is a phenomenal artist and uses his art to donate back to individuals and kids and charities that really help, families that are needing funds and needing assistance to be able to fulfill their lifestyle. So, Keegan, thanks so much for being on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to do this.
You betcha. So, thinking about that and growing up in your family dynamic, you said, hey, we grew up in a way that we didn't have everything you'd ever want in life, but we had a lot of things you need. So, just talk a little bit about kind of your upbringing and the way you were raised.
Yeah, I think I probably had a unique childhood compared to most folks. Grew up in a small town, Sumner, Washington. Lived in a trailer park most of my life, a nice little single wide, and actually wasn't until high school until we got like a real house.
Yeah.
Yeah, so growing up in that environment definitely kind of molds the way you think, the way you look at people, the way you interact with people. And then just to add another little wrinkle into that childhood, I have one sibling, a sister named Joanna, who is disabled. So she has cerebral palsy. She can't walk. She's also legally blind, so she can't see very well. So, kind of growing up with that type of sibling, you go out in public and, there's just different social dynamics at work as everybody looks at you, and you kind of just learn to be very perceptive of kind of the people around you. So I think I got exposure to, I guess, people at their very core from an early age.
Absolutely. So as you're growing up, you start liking this idea of art and getting involved in art. And as you're going through school, you get an opportunity to win a contest for a yearbook. So talk a little bit about just kind of your intro into art and then getting that opportunity to draw the yearbook.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. That was way back in elementary school. I think it was maybe like fifth or sixth grade. They had a contest to draw the cover of the yearbook that year. Yeah. And we were the Huskies, the Maple Lawn Huskies. And I thought it'd be so cool to make this just really mean looking husky, like big sharp teeth, spiky collar. It was kind of like cartoony looking. And I thought it turned out perfect, exactly how I wanted it. Submitted it and won the contest. But then they came back to me and said, well, it's a little too aggressive, a little too mean, a little too scary for elementary school. Can you redo it and maybe draw it maybe a little bit more realistic, like a nice cute husky with his tongue hanging out and maybe like, a star in the background. So I kind of followed that lead. It didn't turn out at all. I wasn't happy with it at all. But that is actually what ended up on the yearbook. So I still have it here somewhere, and it kind of just reminds me of that moment in time, and kind of compromising your original idea and intention for the greater good, I guess.
Absolutely. Now, for people to really, get to a pinnacle of success in whatever it is that they choose, oftentimes there are some of those kind of first moments where it's like, all right, somebody noticed that I was really good at this, right? I mean, good enough to win a school contest, right? Or maybe it was a teacher in class that says, hey, you're pretty good at this. So talk a little bit about in those years, maybe what that meant to get that, piece selected, or if there was anyone, giving encouragement along the way at that point.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, I was a super shy kid. I mean, even all the way through high school and beyond. And I think part of that was just growing up the way I did. Everyone kind of looking at me and my sister, we'd like we're aliens or something. So I always kind of thought that, maybe I should just blend into the background and, not bring any attention to me. So that's basically how I grew up, was doing just that. And, I'd spend a lot of time drawing, of course, just kind of time to myself. So there are kind of like three big things I did a lot: drawing. I love sports. So I played lots of sports, especially basketball. And I actually had a little bit of the entrepreneurial bug too as a young kid. So I think those kind of three things, I always had a lot of time to myself and would get lost in my own thoughts. And so I guess, anytime you got praise, I think it was a really big thing for somebody like me who was so quiet, so reserved, And I
Yeah.
always felt like you lacked something. So when someone's like, no, you're actually good, it was like,
Mm,
really? Like I am? Like that was a really big impact on me.
absolutely. So when you talk about the entrepreneurial bug in sports, sports cards, for young guys and girls, but young guys especially, is something that we have a passion behind. So talk a little bit about that for you in your younger years.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a fun thing in comics too. So I would actually go to our local comic shop, which interestingly was owned by Todd McFarlane, who created Spawn and drew
Yeah.
Spider-Man for a while. So it was so awesome. You could go into that store, and all the way around the ceiling, on the wall around the ceiling, was his original artwork from the different
Wow.
comic books. And I would just go in there and be like, wow, this is so cool. So I would buy comic books just to draw from them. I didn't even read them. I would just draw and kind of learn, the anatomy of some of the superheroes and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I got really into drawing, was that. But then, being a sports fan, collecting cards, another way to kind of, fill up my time. And, you'd always put your cards out and like look at them. Like, oh, I got some cool ones. I got like a Griffey rookie and, whatever, and just be excited about your little meager collection. And then going to card shows, those, they're probably not as popular now as they were back then, but you go there and try to like buy, sell, and trade with people that are 2 3 times your age. You're like this little kid trying to wheel and deal with your little cards. So no, it was awesome just collecting cards. I actually still have a lot of them. It was funny, my daughter and wife, I was like, I had this little chest or like a comic book box that I just had all of my comics in, and we went through them the other day. And I was like, dang, man, these are actually, some of these are worth some money
Right.
now. So I'm glad I hung on to them. Um,
Yes.
yeah, but it was just awesome, man. I just love sports. I love collecting. I love memorabilia, those kind of things. So it's kind of fun now that, that the art, my own art, has kind of taken on a life of its own. People kind of get to collect my work. It was something that I so much enjoyed. Having it come full circle is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, as you're transitioning through school, you end up going to college, and there is a teacher that does not maybe appreciate your art. And talk a little bit about that moment and just some of the feelings that were going through your mind and thoughts you're having there.
Yeah, so that was actually, I think it was my freshman year. And it was an elective class. It was like basically intro to drawing. So the most basic level, entry level class. Like probably 90% of the students probably had no interest in art. He just had to take it as an elective. So most of the people weren't that great because it wasn't really their thing. But I was really into art. I wanted to be an art major. So I was all in. And one of the assignments was to do a self-portrait. And it was a kind of an overnight homework assignment. And the next day we returned to class. Everybody lines up their work in the front of the class. So you get to see everybody's piece that they did themselves. And then what's typical in that kind of the art school setting is you'll do a critique and you go through and the teacher will talk about each student's piece, what they liked, stuff like that. And for the most part, they're always very, very encouraging. So she did just that. She went through all the students. Again, not the greatest work because these are intro students, not art majors, but said all great things about all of their work. And then mine, I was actually really excited to share mine because I thought I took a totally different direction than everybody else. A lot of people just kind of looked in the mirror and drew their face as they saw it. Where I went and I set up the lighting in my room, and I made this really dramatic, like high
Mm,
contrast kind of reflection of my own face, and then looked in the mirror and drew it that way. And then even when I brought it into work, I could tell, or brought it into school, I could see all the students were like, wow, that's really cool. They were really gravitating towards it. So I was like, I'm thinking this is going to be my moment.
yeah.
Yeah, once the teacher got to me, she basically ripped me apart in front of the class saying, it's not that good. Like I've seen this type of drawing before. It's so unoriginal, and kind of on and on. And as she went on, my face just slowly dropped more and more. And again, I was the quiet kid still coming in. So that just really, really crushed me as she kind of embarrassed me in front of the whole class. And I think sometimes you get those teachers or coaches that they take that hard line with you to try to teach you a lesson. This wasn't one of those teachers, because there wasn't like a, hey, I'm trying to push you to be better
Right.
conversation. It was just like, let's kick this guy for whatever reason. So it made an impression in the very, very worst possible way.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. I mean, I think so many times people are excited about something, and then someone in their life that maybe they is in a power or position of power, or someone they respect, goes ahead and kind of derails what they're thinking, and they buy into that concept, and that might be the end, or the closing of a door. So for you, how did you hear that, take that, and then say, I'm going to keep going regardless? So
Well, it actually, I think it had a bigger impression than maybe it should have, really, because
yeah.
it planted that seed in my mind that I wasn't really that good.
Mm.
And it's kind of slow. And although I went on to do pretty good things at University of Washington, I studied abroad in their studio art program in Rome, Italy. So I was like one of the youngest students selected to that. So that was really cool. But yeah, coming out of college, right, is when you need to make a decision, like what I'm going to do for a career. And I think art is one of those things where people, it's easy to say, hey, there's no money there,
Yeah.
you're going to pour your whole life, that's not a real career, that's just a hobby. What are you really going to do? So as a lot of those people were telling me that, I think in the back of my mind, I was hearing that teacher saying you're not that good, and I went a different direction. And it kind of goes to the point that you're kind of making, is like the power that your network has, especially if you trust the opinion of these people, and how they can potentially direct you left or right, and it may or may not be the right decision for you. So for me, I thought it was the right decision based on all that I was hearing,
Yeah.
um, but it ultimately led me away from art, what I thought would be forever.
Yeah. So you hit the nail on the head there, right? We get this information, we make the decisions based on, hey, these people are older than me, they must know what they're talking about, they must be smarter than I am, and so I'll follow it. Although sometimes it leads us away from our passion. I think the tough part is deciding, all right, is this advice because they don't want me to have this struggle, right? Or is this advice because they're really allowing me or encouraging me to follow my passion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think most people probably are erring on the side of uh, trying to help you avoid a pretty big struggle.
Yeah.
And I think in like any high risk industry or position or career, it's easy to say, like, art, music, photography, like those are nearly impossible to kind of make it, whatever make it means. But
Yeah.
so just, spare yourself, man, like go the safe route.
Yeah.
I think it's an easy conversation to have for anybody. And in most cases, you're probably right.
Hmm.
But it's those times where you told it to maybe the wrong person, and we missed out. Everybody misses out on kind of the art that they could have created.
Yeah. Well, so segueing to that, for a while, you decide, hey, you know what? I'm gonna take some time off of art. I'm gonna join the normal working world, right? And you follow the passion of basketball though, and you decide to go and get on with the Seattle SuperSonics. So talk about that, because that's got to be a pretty cool opportunity for you.
It was. I mean, I remember, I just being a huge basketball fan. Even in high school, I was the captain of our team, which we weren't that good, so it's not that impressive. But was captain of the team, did art, all that fun stuff. So once, I think that's every kid's dream job, right? Like, oh, I want to work for the Sonics. I want to be a GM.
Yeah.
I want to like pick the player. So that was kind of what the crazy idea I had in my head. So when my senior year in college, I got my first position with the Sonics, which was working part-time on game nights only, for like minimum wage. It actually cost me more money to park my car than what I made working there. But that was kind of how I got my foot in the door. And then kind of like a little bit of serendipity, where the next year after I graduated, they were starting up an inside sales team which they've never had before.
Mm.
And I've always, again, because I was kind of the quiet kid, I was never like a really good like interviewer per se of like job interviewing. But I actually did have some sales experience at that time. So I guess my approach to sales is way different than probably what a lot of people's is, because I was actually pretty successful in sales, even though it probably didn't translate. If you were looking for a certain kind of sales conversation, it probably wasn't the one we were going to have.
Yeah.
So I remember the manager that hired, I basically was like on the very edge of getting the job or not getting the job. He didn't say you got it. He's basically said, hey, write me like a one pager and tell me why I should hire you.
Yeah.
And for me, I was actually, I'm a pretty good writer. And if I have some time to collect my thoughts, you know, I can put it on paper pretty well. But if in the moment, like I would always panic, right? That's why I was always so bad at interviews. I had that anxiety would kick in and I'd kind of go blank and be like, yeah, I'm not really an idiot. I'm just sounding like I am because I'm kind of freaking out right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I sent him that letter, and that's ultimately what got me my foot in the door, and then worked my way up through the Sonics. Actually, spent 5 years with the team, and by the time I left, I was actually the top salesperson for the team. So it kind of worked out. But there's a lot of kind of great stories and camaraderie and stuff along the way within those 5 years.
I want to highlight what you said about getting your foot in the door. So many people want to be the head salesman day one, but they're not willing to be the senior that gets paid minimum wage, costs more to park their car than they're going to earn that night. But when you do something that you're passionate about and you love, I'm sure there's days where you're like, why am I doing this? But there are other days where you're like, it's worth it, right? You know, even though I'm paying more than I'm going to get paid, it's so much fun. I love the atmosphere. Talk a little bit about how you felt during those times and being willing to do the small things to get the big opportunity in the long run.
Yeah, and I didn't even know it would actually lead to anything.
Right.
Just wanted to get, I love basketball. I wanted to be around the game, in the arena. Like it was just fun, a great atmosphere to be a part of. And hopefully, maybe if the stars align, it might grow into something better. But you got to start somewhere. I think a lot of people want to work in sports. It's one of those industries that is cool to work within. So they get a zillion resumes. And even once I got hired, I mean, everybody there is a rock star. They're all like really, really good. And then the industry, ironically, the athletes make millions of dollars, but the workers are probably like 50% underpaid compared to their market value.
Yeah.
And again, these are really smart people that could go and make double anywhere else. So you got a lot of competitive dynamics working together against each other as people, they want to get from those low rungs where you start at to the higher rungs where you can make like a decent salary. So man, you really learn a lot about yourself, about competitive, about even working together, because what was funny, I'm still good friends with everybody I worked with. And we always joke about those early days that our inside sales office, if you want to call it, was essentially a closet. So the Sonics had this really nice, they were in this really nice building on the waterfront in Seattle. And the team office was up on the 5th floor, which is the top floor. Awesome view of the water, amazing. And then our inside sales team was on the 1st floor, basically like a closet room, like a small conference room, and they just lined it with desks, like little cubicles. So you had like 10 people smashed in there, all competing for a chance to get out of the closet, I guess.
That's amazing. As you mentioned, you get the sales role, you progress through. What do you think it was about you? And you mentioned, hey, I'm probably not the typical sales type of personality or conversations, but you really were able to connect with people and move them to action. So talk a little bit about, for you, what it was about your unique style and how you were able to have success that way.
Yeah, I mean, it all, like any sales, I guess, position is about relationships, but I think how you get there and how you develop it can be drastically different. And for me, I'm a pretty like easygoing guy, not like that crazy high energy salesman guy. So when I would talk to people, I would just like talk to them like a friend, like a normal volume, maybe a little on the relaxed side. We just talk about sports, and I never really pushed any sales onto them. I was never that sales guy. I
Yeah.
think once we talked about, the team or whatever you want to talk about, like, hey, you know what, we have this, this package available, or I don't know if you ever considered season tickets. There's actually some pretty cool things you get with it, and it's a lot cheaper. You just kind of like sprinkle in some of the benefits as you go, very, very naturally. So I think I got from, point A to point Z in a lot different way than most people. They'll try to like skip as many steps to get the sales quickly as possible. And I would maybe elongate the sales process a little bit, but your close ratio would be much higher as a result. So it's kind of the old tortoise versus the hare
Yeah.
mentality. So that's kind of how I really built not only my approach to sales back then, but even now in the art world. Like I'm never pushing for that quick win, always kind of playing the long game. And if it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, you still met somebody really cool, and you
Yeah.
get to, so I guess it wasn't always just about the sale. So
Yes. Now, you decide that, hey, I should maybe get my MBA if I want to stick in the business world. And while you're getting your MBA, you and a friend or a couple of folks decide to start a business. So once again, that entrepreneurial spirit is coming out. Talk about that phase and what that first business was.
yeah, so I mean, to tie off the Sonics, the team of course got sold and moved to Oklahoma City. So you can either go with the team and move, or you're out of a job.
Yeah.
So I decided to not go with the team because I didn't want to leave Seattle. So yeah, that was kind of the time where I left, and what next. And again, I was full on in business career mode. So yeah, the kind of the obvious option for me was to go back, get an MBA. So I went back to the University of Washington, and yeah, towards the end of my time there, UW actually has one of the best business programs specifically for startups, and they
Okay.
do competition every year that's actually open to all the schools. It's not just a UW only thing. So they had like, I don't even know, 100 teams enter from like 15 different schools.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty rigorous process where you submit your business plan on like a one pager, and then there's what they call an investment round, where it's
Mm.
the top teams get invited, and it's like a huge auditorium, and you have people walking around from the community, and you pitch them on your business, and
Yeah.
they can invest in you, and they do it kind
Yeah.
of silently on their own. So that at the end of that, the top teams, like the top 16, move on, and then you're like in person with like a panel of like legit business people, and they're like picking your business apart. And then we actually made it to the final, where now this is kind of a big deal at UW, because the top prize, it's like, you know 10, 20, 30, $40,000 in like
Yeah.
seat. So we were presenting in front of an auditorium, in front of like all the business leaders. And again, I was like the shy guy, like shit, like trying to make sure I got my stuff together. But we ended up basically taking third. We got so a lot of kind of notoriety just from the process. We got some money as a result, and then we ended up raising a small round as a result of that, and starting our own business.
Amazing. Talk about the difficulties of getting a business started and getting people on the same page and making decisions.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredibly difficult. I mean, right? Because there's no playbook. I think we're, a lot of us, we grow up in life, and you always have like an elder to turn to, our manager
Mm.
to tell you what you need to do next. Oh, you did
Yeah.
that. Now start on this thing. And there's just no one to do that. And there's not a very clear path of what the priorities really are or should
Right.
be. You're thinking, man, we need to get this, but maybe this is more important. So there's a lot of decisions that have to happen as a result. But it was just a really amazing learning experience. I mean, whenever I talk to like students, or I always push people into the startup world if that's what they're interested in, potentially owning or running a business, because you wear so many different hats. It's so high paced. And you just meet so many different people. And, a lot of times people want to help you along the
Yeah.
way, which is really cool too. So it's just a unique experience that you can't really get working at a large company.
No doubt. Now, as that business takes off and is doing well, you guys end up deciding, hey, it's time to sell. That just opens up a different door for you. So, talk through that transition for you.
Yeah, so that company ended up, we basically took it as far as we could, and then we ended up exiting. It wasn't like a huge win, but
Yeah.
we made it out alive. Um, and
I think that is a big win in the startup space, by the way.
technically, yeah, you survived. But what was kind of wild is that we were trying to raise another round of funding. We ultimately did not raise that next round. But in that process, a friend of mine introduced me to. He's like, "Hey, would you want to meet, uh, Lawyer Malloy, who's a former NFL player? He actually invests in a number of different companies. So he set up a meeting with Lawyer and I to pitch him on that previous company.
Yeah.
And so the Lawyer came, and then with Lawyer came another guy named James Sun, who was the finalist on The Apprentice. So the LA season, he made it to the very end
Yeah.
and got fired at the end. So he was like the runner up. So anyways, I was pitching Lawyer on this on our company, and James was there for his business support for Lawyer. And at the end of that, they didn't invest. So as that company wound down, James got back in touch with me. He's like, "Hey, I'm actually starting this company. Would you be interested?" And that kind of one thing led to the other, and I joined that company as, I guess, employee number one, joining the founding team.
Yeah.
And that company, we went on to raise, $4 million, and built this. It was a mobile app that we grew over 3-4 years, and that was ultimately acquired. So and that was even a crazier role, because we actually were a quote real business, real customers. There's a lot going on. So I ran kind of the sales and marketing for that company. So even a crazier experience, in mostly good ways. I think when I look back, it was mostly positives. You always have those, a couple all-nighters where I literally was in the office the next morning trying to get stuff figured out. But it's pretty cool to have a group of people that are all so dedicated to the
Yeah.
same thing and all pulling in the same direction. And there's never like the finger pointing, because it was like,
Mm.
okay, there's this problem, and it doesn't really matter whose problem it is, but we got to figure it out, because we're all here together. And I think that was something I never really experienced with any of the previous companies that I was a part of.
Now, Keegan, I think you're a pretty humble guy, so I'm just going to call you out on this. And I'm noticing a trend here. You were the captain of the basketball team. In college, you get invited to go overseas and study. You become the best salesman in the company. You pitch a guy, and he ends up calling you back to want to hire you. You make a very good impression on people, is what I'm starting to realize. What is it about you that you feel like really resonates with people?
I think probably it is just being humble in a lot of regards, and
Yeah.
mostly leading by example. Really, that's kind of the number one
Yeah.
thing, because I was never that guy that could come in and light up a room with my personality. And I was too afraid to even try it.
Yeah.
So I just stayed away. So I just was always like the hardest worker in the room. So I got really good grades throughout school, not because I was the smartest kid, but I just worked harder. Graduating near the top of my class in graduate school. Again, I wasn't the smartest kid. I just worked harder. And I think in just being real with people,
Yeah.
I think a lot of times people over sell themselves, especially in an interview environment.
Yeah.
And I think that was always a good thing and a bad thing for me, because I think whenever I would go in, even though I did great things in the past, I would almost like undersell myself a bit, so I wouldn't get the position a lot of times. But I think the people that could see through that, and because even when I had to hire people, I was always like a firm believer in, you want to hire more for like attitude
Yeah.
than previous experience. I think it
Mm.
can be learned, right? But it's
Yeah.
like, does this person want to learn? And do I want to work with them? And do they have all the right other attributes? Because I can
Yeah.
teach them this thing. And I, so I think that was part of it. It was like, you can see that's a person you probably want to work with, and he has a track record of success, even though he might not be touting the whole story. Like, it's numbers don't lie, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? And thing with at the Sonics, like I wasn't the guy that was like in your face, like the sales guy, but they kind of nicknamed me the silent assassin. That would just be like chilling, like having these like really semi-quiet conversations with people. And then it's just like you throw these big numbers on the board and they're like, what the hell, man? Like,
Yeah.
so like the numbers at the end of the day, there's a lot of ways to get to the prize at the
Yeah.
end.
You betcha. Now, in your life, your mom and yourself had a close relationship, and she ends up passing away early on. And so, talk about the impact that that had on you, but then the outlet that that opened back up for you.
Yeah, I mean, growing up, my mom was always my biggest fan, like biggest supporter. And again, for a quiet kid, that was like a really big deal. And
Yeah.
I even one of my assignments, I forget which grade it was in, but I had to do like a marketing plan for like Nike or whatever it
Yeah.
was. And she was like, "Wow, this is really good." And neither of my parents went to college, but so I was like, "Oh, you're just my mom. You're saying that you could be the CEO of Nike one day." And I was like, "No,
Wow.
that's ridiculous." She's like, why not you? She would kind of, and that even that seed stuck in my head too. Like, why not you? And
Yeah.
at the time it didn't take hold, but yeah, the seed was planted. And even with my sister, being disabled, my mom was always volunteering at all the Special Olympics. She was like
Mm.
actually coaching them, a lot of the teams, and I would volunteer. I coached basketball a year. So she was always very much involved. So yeah, I think, getting that news of, your mom's not feeling very well,
Mm.
on a Friday, she goes in the hospital on Saturday and passes away on a Sunday.
Wow.
It happened that fast. It like, you're not prepared. You don't know what to do. It's like, you're just stunned. You're just
Yeah.
staring into oblivion. Like, what the hell? Yeah, it was just crazy. So, I mean, for me, it kind of changed like everything, really everything,
Yeah.
where, you kind of like realize how short of a time you're here
Mm.
and how fragile life is when it can just bang, 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 and you're not here anymore.
Right.
I kind of, started to think very, very deeply about myself, my past, my present, my future, and like what do I want to do next? Like, why am I here? Why are any of us here? What's the point of all this?
Yeah.
Um, and I think during that process, I was just driving home one day and I was again thinking about my mom, my childhood, and how, art was always such a big part of growing up.
Yeah.
And at this point, I hadn't drawn anything in about 10 years,
Wow.
like at all. It's just art was not on my radar, never was going to be on my radar again. But it was just like something just kept, it was a very weird feeling where I just like, man, I should really, I don't know why, man. Just maybe just nostalgia. I want to draw something.
Yeah.
So that night I went home and I did. And that was kind of the first thing that kind of started this journey.
Now, as you talk about, losing a parent, losing someone that really believed in you, instilled a strong sense of confidence in you, what about going back to the basic, the original, right? The passion for art. How did that kind of come to be something that you're like, you know what? Yeah, I should try this.
Yeah, I mean, it has taken on a few different evolutions, really, because in the very beginning, again, there was no uh, goal behind it becoming a job or a career or anything like that. It was just like literally that first inclination of like, man, you should draw. It's been so long. Like, can you still even do
Yeah.
it? And then just thinking about my mom. So that was that initial pull. And
Yeah.
I remember I just sat down, I drew a picture of Michael Jordan, who, favorite player, of course, if you grew up, in the 90s, and you like basketball. I mean, damn.
Yeah.
Uh, so I drew a picture of Michael. I remember I posted that on like Facebook or something, and no one even knew I could draw. Like, it was like this unknown thing. I was like, wow, what the heck? And somebody had asked me, can you do a piece of draw a picture of Cam Chancellor of the Seahawks?
Yeah.
and they even offered me $100. So I was like, dang, dude, if I can make like $100 a month extra doing this, like easy money, like
Yeah.
it's how cool is that? So that was I did a piece of Cam and I posted that, and then he saw that online and then reshared it.
Yep.
And then I replied to his sharing of that, and then we had a couple of messages, and he asked me to do a piece for him. So that happened nowhere, out of the blue, expected, from literally no drawing to one, but now this big athlete. Seahawks were the best team in the league at the time. Super Bowl winning Super Bowls, going to Super Bowls, and they had the best defense. So Cam was like one of the biggest guys at the time. So it was pretty
Yeah.
remarkable, his attention, and to have a chance to do a piece for him.
I love a who knew in the moment like that, right? Hey, I'm just gonna, make this visual of Cam Chancellor for a friend, and then he ends up commenting on it and sharing it, and you guys get connected. Now, additionally, being in Seattle, getting the connect with Cam, all of a sudden that opens up a door with Richard Sherman. He makes a post. So talk about the connection there.
Yeah, it wasn't even like a direct intro, but
Yeah.
maybe Richard saw something of mine, because one thing I like to do with my art is I share updates every day as I progress through it.
Yeah.
So videos, images, so people can really see it all come together. It's kind of fun to kind of see behind the curtain, see how it all comes together. So as I was posting those of Cam's piece, Cam was resharing a lot of them.
Yeah.
So it's like a lot of new eyeballs are on my work.
Yeah.
And then, and kind of in the back of my mind throughout all this, I was like, man, like I had a full-time job at the time, and so I didn't need to. I had no intention of making money with my art. So I was like, man, it'd be cool if I could, do something for charity, like use my art to raise money. And I had this idea, but I didn't know if anybody would want to do it. I didn't even know how I'd pull it off. So, but I saw Richard Sherman posted on Twitter that he had his upcoming charity softball game for his foundation. And I just replied to his public tweet, hey man, I had this idea. Can I like send you a DM about it? And he was like, sure. I was like, oh shit. So we follow each other. And then I told him the idea. I was like, man, I want to do this drawing of you guys, whatever. I want to do a drawing, create 200 prints and sell them for 200 each, and then donate 100% of the money. Would you be down for that? And we'll sign them. We'll both sign them. We'll both number them all. So it's like this really limited edition thing. Like, what do you think? And I just figured he was like, yeah. And then, but he's like, yeah, man, let's do it. So I was just like floored, like blown away.
Yeah.
Wanted to give this a go. And I remember talking to my wife, and she was like, yeah, you should just call it the Keegan 200, because it's like 200 prints for 200 each. So I was like, okay. So that's kind of how the name came about. And I remember we announced the project on a Monday, and the on sale date was going to be the coming up Friday. And that week was just, it went bonkers on social media, went like national, international news. Even the Seahawks were in training camp. So the press was asking during his official press conferences, were asking him about this project, not about me.
Yeah.
Who am I? Some random dude. So by the time Friday rolled around, it sold out on the first day, $40,000 raised, donated. And that was kind of the first one of many to come.
Yeah. Now we keep using the term draw, and we're going to draw. Now we have to explain to the listeners what drawing means. So Keegan takes a photo and with a pencil is able to make it look literally like a photo of the person or of the moment in time. You referenced Michael Jordan. He has Michael Jordan fully extended doing that. Now, this doesn't take him, a quick 30 minutes or an hour, and he's just mass producing these things. It can take 5 hours, 30 hours. So talk a little bit about your process of all of the detail and how you go about drawing these immaculate photos.
Yeah, I would say on average, most of the drawings are like 40 to 60 hours each. The Jordan one that you're referring to, and the dunk one, that one was probably over 300. And then I'm going to be doing one that I think will probably be like 6 months long, like just all day, like thousands of hours. So it's like I'm like learning to draw all over again. So as
Yeah.
I learn, I keep wanting to like push myself to see, can I go farther? Can I go further? And actually, that very first one, that very first fundraiser was Richard Sherman. A lot of people don't know the story behind the drawing. So the drawing itself was of the huddle, the defense. Whenever they would get in this huddle, they do this thing back and forth and
Yeah.
get each other hyped up. So the guy who wanted to commission that piece was like, hey, I found this image of the guys doing the huddle, but he's like, I really want Earl Thomas and Richard Sherman to kind of be in the front, but Earl wasn't even in this image at all. So I had to figure out a way to get Earl into the drawing or into the image. So and it was actually really difficult. Now you can look at that piece and it looks like he belongs there and it's all normal, like that's how the original image was. But the challenge was putting him in there, matching the lighting. Like he actually has, his arms are all tattooed up. So
Yeah.
figuring out how those tattoos would look being wrapped around, because there was no images. I had to pull all these different images together and see how they wrap around the arm a certain way at that angle with the light hitting it a certain way. So yeah, I think most people just see it as like, oh, that's a cool thing, but they don't really know what went into like pulling that all together. So but yeah, long time, incredibly detailed. I just use a pencil,
Yeah.
trying to get that hyper realistic, or I just keep kind of pushing myself to extract more and more and more detail. So it's not a short process. It's not really a great kind of business if you look at your hourly rate, but it's a kind of a fun challenge. And obviously it's been working out well so far.
Yeah. Now, once again, we're trending with Seattle Seahawks defenders, but you also get Russell Wilson. You got the signed jersey behind you, but you also have Barack Obama. You have Dave Grohl. You get artists as well, so or musicians as well. So talk about how some of those relationships came to be and the connections and opportunities you had there.
Yeah, I mean, every project has some crazy unique story. I mean,
We
literally
should just do an episode for every project you've done. That's what we should do.
they're like that too,
Yeah.
because I could just talk about forever. Like even the one I did for Obama, it was like I get a call from the governor's office of Washington, and they're basically like, "Hey, Obama's coming into town for this fundraiser. We want to give him something like super unique that no one else could do. So, like, could you create a piece for him?"
Yeah.
I actually was leaving out of town in 2 days for a vacation that we had planned forever with my family, and knowing that my stuff takes so long,
Yeah.
I was like, it's not physically possible for me to really do something that I would be proud of. So I was about to tell them like, sorry, I can't do it. But then I was like, what the hell am I saying, dude? This is a piece for the president. You don't just pass on that. Like that's ridiculous. So I literally started working on this piece, and
Yeah.
I did like back to back, like 16 to 18-hour days. And for me, normally I draw like 3 hours at a time because it's so mentally taxing. Like you're really trying to get those details, you're really concentrating.
Yeah.
So you gotta like take breaks and walk away and recharge your mind. But this one, I just didn't have that option because it had to be done. So I was just like a zombie. My wife would like bring food in to like my little art studio, and I would eat like while I'm drawing, just go, go, go. And I literally dropped it off on my way to the airport. And then like the next day he was coming into town, and I got a friend sent me a picture who was at the event, and it was the governor presenting Obama with the piece, and it was like pretty wild. And I'm still waiting actually to see, because what I was told is that officially it's a gift from a dignitary from government.
Okay.
So it's going to the piece will either end up at the presidential library that I think is now open in Chicago, or if he likes it, he's going to take it and put it up in his house or whatever, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know where it is. So if it's in Chicago at the library, cool, I'll see it again. If I don't ever see it again, I guess that's even better.
Yeah. Wow. Now, as you're doing these drawings, there has to, well, there, I guess there don't have to be, but there potentially could be some oops, I need to go back and adjust that, or I need to erase. how, how do you go about doing that? Because you go so intricately. I mean, you're so detailed. How does one go about that?
Well, it's actually interesting because when I finish each drawing, I love it because it's the best that I could do. And I wait like a day or a week, and I'm just like, oh man, like I could have done all these things differently.
Yeah.
And even crazier looking back at my, or even that early one of Cam Chancellor, and I just like shake my head like, oh my god, this was so bad. So it's this continual process. I actually take a very, I don't know if it's because of my business background and looking at things analytically, and okay, how did that campaign go? You know, how did it work out? What did we learn from it? What can we do better next time? I
Yeah.
kind of take that approach with my art too. It's like, okay, what's kind of lacking in this piece? Where, okay, the detail on the face, or no, maybe it's the jersey doesn't quite, and like, oh, how could I have made it better? Oh, well, I could have done a little bit more like this. So I kind of take that approach with every piece. So I'm kind of learning along the way. So hopefully every piece is getting better as I progress. But you could definitely see a difference from kind of the beginning to where I'm at now. So it's been cool to see that progress, and just knowing like, hey, I could probably still get better because I'm still not super happy with the pieces that I produce. I still want to do more and get better.
I think that's a phenomenal point. Once again, we're talking about it in respect to art, right? But it could be anything. And that's being proud of what you accomplished, because at that moment in time, it was the best you could do, right? It doesn't mean it's the best you're ever going to do, but there is power in saying that's the best I could do today and still being hungry to get better.
Totally. That's it. I think that's whenever because I read a lot too, and
Yeah.
listen to audio and podcasts and all that stuff. I'm fascinated about other people's approach to being great at
Yeah.
something, and I think a lot of people, like at least the best people, they never thought they were good enough. And that
Mm,
fuel, and that's really like the story of my life. Like I never felt like I was good enough, right? So I always had to do more, or felt like I had to do more, forever. And that's kind of how it still is. Like, you feel like, especially in art, like it feels like it's so fragile where it could all just go away. So you're like, I can't let that happen. Like I got to work twice as hard to give myself a shot at making it. So I think, yeah, as soon as you let off the gas and think that you've made it, wherever that is, that's kind of the beginning of the end.
mm, that's really good. Now, at this point, you've donated, I think it's over 600,000. It could be even more money than that. But I think that really brings your story to this point full circle, right? Growing up, I didn't necessarily have finances. I've been given opportunities and I've excelled in the opportunities that present themselves to financially take care of myself. So now I can give back more. So what does it mean to you to be able to give back to, charities and affiliations that need these funds?
I mean, it's amazing. It's like really like a childhood dream, because I think a lot of people, when they're always saying like, oh, when I reach this point, then I'm going to start giving back for
Yeah.
whatever reason. And I just kind of took it the opposite approach. I just gave back before I even had anything.
Yeah.
And it was pretty wild to see. I guess the reaction was probably the most surprising, was like the more that I just gave, like all of it, 100%, not only the time and the artwork, but people would buy prints. I have to like package them all up and like send them post off. It was just like this massive undertaking. And I just didn't make any money off it. I would just, it was all donated.
Yeah.
But the more that I kind of gave, it was like the more that like the community kind of gave back to me and supporting
Mm,
my work. They would want to get a print for themselves. They would tell a friend, they would share, whatever. And like over time, the bigger the projects were and the more that you gave away, the more that people wanted to support what you were doing. And it was this awesome thing where like everybody was winning all along the way. And that's
yeah.
really the best possible scenario, right? Like the win-win-win for everybody. And that's actually, now that I've built these campaigns, that's how I structure it, where it's like, um, usually the original drawing, I'll sell that separately. So that's my, I guess, compensation. So I get a little bit of a win from the original. The prints, that raises the big bucks. That's all donated. So the charity wins. And then of course, the community wins too, not only from the donations, but being a part of the campaign, just getting kind of the positive vibes that come off from just seeing a project like this. It's
Yeah.
like everybody is benefiting. So that's what I really have loved. Like people are sharing their stories with me about, whether it's the art or if I'm drawing like Eddie Vedder, the project I did with Ed, it was like so many like I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan. I just got back from LA to go see them. But everyone, like I would receive so many emails of like, oh man, I first saw Pearl Jam in like the 90s and I was at this show and that, I camped out the night before. Everyone's got these crazy stories about the band and
Yeah.
experiences. So it was fun to kind of like, with every drawing I've done, people have kind of shared with me a little piece of them too. So it's been this crazy, like new things keep developing, new little wrinkles of each project continue to evolve as I progress through these. And that one with Ed, it sold out instantly. Like it basically my website crashed, it broke,
Yeah.
and we oversold because like the freaking website went berserk and oversold by like 6. I was like, no, what am I gonna do? So we raised like $100,000 in seconds. So it's kind of got to that point where it's like that crazy now, but it's all a good thing because we all, donated all the money and we're just trying to make the world a little bit better place, one drawing at a time.
Well, Keegan, I appreciate you sharing your story, man, and highlighting some of the pivotal moments that have led you to where you're at today. One, I can't wait to continue to follow your journey and see all the new projects that are coming, and all the amazing, people you're gonna be able to connect with and impact that way. But two, just so everyone knows, Keegan's dream that we're working on actively is to bring the Seattle Supersonics back to Seattle with the owner, possibly also the GM, Mr. Keegan Hall.
We're getting close. I don't need to be like the majority owner. I just want to
Yeah.
have like a minor share in there somewhere, if that's even possible. So I'm just throwing it out there to the world. And who knows, maybe I'll get that little shot to be the smallest of the minorityest minor owner. We'll see.
Well, Keegan, thanks again so much for your time today, man. Excited for you, and can't wait to just share your story and help continue to, like you said, impact the world.
All right, thanks, Phil. Appreciate it.